Welcome to the journey where we talk to parents of athletes on how they got their kids to where they are. Welcome back. We're here again with Ray Caldwell. And so I know last episode we talked about the early development of your daughters when they first started playing. So I know you started as a finest in 2007. Do you think it helped or hurt your daughter's development?
Both. It surely helped from a developmental standpoint, basketball-wise. I dove into the game. I think I'm one of the better skill set developers when I am in the gym. I'm not in the gym as much anymore, but we're known to have skilled players at a young age. I went to college basketball practices. I went to clinics. I made sure I'd learn from the best, at least in my area that I was allowed to tap into. So surely developmentally, it did not help from the perspective of my oldest. You know how it is with your father. What he says is law, right? Once you become teenagers, you rebel a little bit, but by and large, what your father says is law. So it's hard, or it was hard for my oldest to finally get over someone knows more about the game than my dad, at least for this environment. So when she went to UCLA, she's still going, well, my dad taught it this way. Well, your dad's not on this staff. Your dad doesn't teach like us. So that definitely inhibited her at that level, and it surely hurt my youngest. She was super nice at a young age, really maximized her ability, but it hurt her because she never got a chance to be a young woman. She's a singer, and that's just one thing. When we lived in California, everybody called her Hollywood. She was always gonna be the flyest, nails was always done, glasses on. But when I started my program, you're in the gym every day because you in there with your father and your sister. And I do wonder at times, now don't get it wrong, I wouldn't change anything. But it did not help her enjoy her youth as a kid. So helped and hurt.
So what did middle school ball look like?
Oh, it was horrible. From a middle school level here, we get it, right? It's a positive environment for young women to go in and play. Mm-hmm. But when we moved here, basketball wasn't what it is now. And you would have kids that just never touched the ball. So yes, you had the A and the B teams, which is something we didn't have in Cali. In Cali, there was one team. And then half the time in Cali, since it was going bankrupt, you didn't even play middle school ball. You played year-round club ball, because they didn't have the money and the resources to drive kids around in middle school. So the ball was a lot more intense. It was better. It was more polished. And when we moved here, it was very frustrating, right? Because she's trying to be a pro. I am living my dreams through her. We can act like that wasn't the case, but it was. Once you want to be a pro, I want to be a pro. I failed. We're going to do this together. And sitting in that crowd was tough, dealing with the middle school coaches who were great people. Super women, great role models, but they didn't really know the game, where I'm studying it all day, every day. So it was very difficult, challenging, and I made, how would I say this, I wasn't a good person at times because of it and my expectations.
Okay. So were you ever loud in the stands?
All the time. As I said, I didn't want to curse on your podcast, but I wasn't a good person at times because we woke up at 5 a.m. We spent money to fly across the country. We had the massages 2 or 3 times a week. Arasti costs. Not to plug Arasti, y'all need to make sure that they sponsor you since we're giving that plug there. But that being said, we were so involved that when people weren't as involved, I took it personal. So.
When did you start to feel like rankings were important?
I'm ashamed to say when she went to nationals at 10 years old. Some guy who was there, some evaluator who claimed he knew what he was talking about, said that's the number 5th ranked kid in the country. And I came back to San Antonio. I got the 5th ranked kid in the country. And realized he didn't know what he was talking about and know she was never top 5 in the country. But it did help me motivate myself and her to go be the 5th ranked kid in the country. And the same thing with Desi. Desi, my youngest, by the time she really got serious about the game, I already understood that at the end of the day, it didn't matter.
What do you think the biggest hurdle was in their development?
The biggest hurdle? Great question. For the same reasons that I moved to San Antonio are the same reasons that San Antonio, by and large, doesn't produce a lot of Bellas. This is a kickback city. People are very cordial, nice, Texas hospitality. Demographically, we don't have what Dallas or Houston has. 6 million people, a lot more former athletes in those cities. So for our kids in San Antonio to be elite and compete at that level that those kids compete, we have to manufacture situations like yourself. You play against boys. That's why you want top kids in the country. So we always had to play boys because we couldn't duplicate the size and athleticism with our local female population. That was one. And then life, it's always a tough balance trying to raise a young woman and let her enjoy her life, but we're chasing the NBA or the WNBA. So I don't know if I answered that question, but.
Okay, when did you know your girls had the chance to play in college?
Immediately. Call those things that are not as though they are. I figured if anybody else could do it, why couldn't I? So when Rasay said she was going to be a pro, there was nothing else to think about. So of course, college was going to be a byproduct of that.
So I know I asked you this in the last episode, but was it a struggle to separate coach and dad in middle school?
Surely. Like I said in the last episode, I'm still figuring that part out. Very difficult early until mentors like a Fonzel Martin or Speedy Greggs, I would ask them, they raised daughters that were successful college basketball players. And I leaned into a lot of mentors. I still do to this day. But one of the things is that I remember that they told me and others is once we get in the car, conversation stops. If you're going to yell at them about what they did or what they did on the court, that's terrific. Once that door slams, end it. And it took me a while to get to that point. But when I did, our relationship got better.
So if you could tell the parents of middle school students anything, what would it be?
Rankings don't matter, especially in middle school. You burn out quick that way. There's a million horror stories of young people being exalted at a young age, and it comes back to hurt them. And I go back to where, you understand this culturally, kids are to be seen and not heard. When nowadays in middle school, we see them and we always hear from them because of social media. But I think that our elders understood that if you give too much to a kid too early, it backfires on them and they become arrogant, and it's counterproductive to their development long term. And you get these speeches at the beginning of every practice, and I don't do that to embarrass the people that I hear about, is please learn how counterproductive that is, not to be worshiped at a young age.
Thank you for joining me on his journey. Stay tuned for the next episode where we talk about high school and beyond.